In this video, we'll be rewriting quadratics from standard form into intercept form. So let's take a look here at an example. So currently on the screen I have standard form, but I know that intercept form looks like this, where we have x plus p and x plus q in parentheses. So essentially what I have is two sets of parentheses being multiplied. Now, the only time in my math career that I've seen two sets of parentheses being multiplied like that I created was when we were factoring. And factoring specifically trinomials. So something that looked like what I see on the screen, that x squared minus 5x plus 6, where I would use my a, b, and c values to help me factor that further into two parentheses. So if we're going to move from standard form into intercept form, we're going to need to use our factoring strategies to help us do this. So here, because I see that I have a trinomial or three components, if I reflect back on my knowledge of factoring, I know that when we factored, when we had trinomials, we either had those perfect square trinomials, which I can see this is not, or we had something where we would factor it further using our a, b, and c values. We'd use factor by grouping or the ABC method. So here, in order to factor this, or in order to write this from standard form into intercept form, I'm going to factor it by using my a, b, and c values. So I'm going to start by finding a, which I know is 1, b, which is -5, and c, which is 6. And when I factor, I know that I always start by finding two numbers that multiply to whatever a times c is, which in this case is 1 times 6, which is 6. And then I need two numbers that add to whatever b is, which is -5. So for this problem, I need two numbers that multiply to 6 but add to -5. And when I think about those values, what comes to mind is -3 and -2. Those two numbers, when multiplied, become 6, and when added, become -5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite my middle term, just like I did during the factoring unit, using that -3 and -2. So here we have y equals x squared, or 1x squared if you prefer. Then I'm rewriting that -5x to be -3x, -2x, plus 6. And don't be afraid to use keep, change if that helps you as well. Then from here, we look at each of these in pairs. So now that we've rewritten it, we look at each in pairs and we find the greatest common factor. Well, the greatest common factor of that first pair is just x. If I factor out that x, I end up with x and then plus -3 or -3, depending on if you're using keep, change or not. And then if I look at the second pair, remember I want those parenthesis parts to match when I'm using this ABC method or factoring by grouping. So I'm going to factor out a -2, because factoring out a -2 will result in x plus -3 or x minus 3, again, depending on whether or not you are using keep, change or not. So now from here, what I notice is that I have matching parenthesis parts. And because I have matching parenthesis parts, what I can do is I can group these first two values out in front together. So I have both x and -2. So I can have x plus -2 or x minus 2. Both of those numbers are being multiplied by x plus -3. So I was able to use factoring to help me write this further. And there's two ways you can write your answer here. You could write it like this, or if you do not like using keep, change, you can just write x minus 2 and x minus 3. Regardless of whether or not you use keep, change, this will give you intercept form. And you can now see that your intercepts are clearly contained within your equation. So let's take a look at a second example. So again, remember when we go from standard form into intercept form, we need to use our factoring strategies. And in this case, because we have a trinomial, we're specifically going to use our a, b, and c values and factoring by grouping to help us. So here we start off and we find our a value, which is 1, because if it's not there, the coefficient of x squared is 1. Our b value, which is -7, and our c value, which is -18. And then from here, we start by finding two numbers that multiply to a times c, which in this case is -18, and then two numbers that add up to our b value, which is -7. So I need two numbers that multiply to -18 and add to -7, which when I think about the factors of 18, I come up with -9 and a +2. Those two numbers multiply to -18, but add to -7. So I'm now going to rewrite this middle term using that. So I have y equals 1x squared minus 9x plus 2x minus 18. And then from here, I look at these in pairs and find the greatest common factor in each pair. So I factor out just an x. You can factor out a 1 as well if you'd like to there, but just an x is fine. So we factor out an x, so we have x minus 9 left in parentheses. If you're using keep change change, that would be x plus -9. Then remember we want the parenthesis parts to match, so we're going to factor a 2 out of this second set. So we have 2 times, and then we get x minus 9 again when we factor out that 2. Then from here, because we have matching parenthesis parts, we can group the x and the +2 together out in front. So we have y equals x plus 2 grouped together, all being multiplied by x minus 9. So from here, I have used my factoring skills to rewrite things from standard form into intercept form.